Welcome back to my continued adventures with this bend buckle Falcon. Well, it didn't take long at all to get the fuselage to this stage, but I think it's a little bit of a reality check because when you've got 10% of the model to do, it normally takes 90% of your time. So what I need to do now is basically the whole thing's just been glued together. There's been no sanding, no work on it to clean it up at all. And the whole front area obviously needs a cowl here, and this will be sheeted to approximately here, so the front cabin area will all be sheeted. The windows and the framing needs to be sheeted, and this needs to be covered. So there's a lot of work involved, as well as some fettling with setting up the tail. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually bend some ply around this area here to cover this, which will then be covered in 1/16 balsa, and that's so that this thickness of wood here matches the wood that's used on the sides. So what have I been doing? Well, you can see that I have a push rod installed for the throttle for the engine, and you will notice that it's extremely long, and that's because I haven't yet made a decision on where all of the servos will go. I'm thinking towards servos being installed in the tail, either in the tail surfaces themselves, and then the model will be connected up via some servo leads, or in the fuselage at the rear, and then when the tail surface is bolted on, the pushrod connections will be made. I haven't made my mind up yet. But this servo here, I may need to move the CG back, I may need to make the CG come forward. So this pushrod, tube pushrod, will be either cut short or will be left long, so I can put the servo at the back or at the front. So that's the reason it's in that state. But it's obviously easier to put it in here now than it is to try and put it in after it's all been covered. So what am I going to do? Well, I have to bend this piece of plywood around here, and at the moment it's rather stiff. It'll sort of go, but I'm frightened to push it too far because I'm worried that it'll split. So I'm going to do a few things with this. I'm going to actually mark the centre line on so I can line it up square. But I'm going to have to apply water and steam to it to get it to go around, and that's the process that I'm going to show you now. So I'll just pause it and we'll get set up to do that. So here we go. This has been wet on the outer surface. It's a little bit damp on there, but that's not the main thing to do. I've marked the centre line on, and what I'm going to do is steam this up and put a bend into it and hold a bend into it while it's steamed. And that's first thing is to get the length right so I can trim it the length, and I'll repeat the process. So I'll pause it while this is steaming up, and then you can actually see me doing the job itself. Now obviously this is going to get hot, but not so much that it's going to burn me, and I'm just being careful what I'm doing here. And very quickly the plywood becomes much more manageable once some heat's applied. That's enough. Come back round to the model. Now all I'm going to do here now is bend this to show it's much easier to move it round. And I've got this lined up, so that's that position. And that one. And that one. Excuse me. And that one. Now I know I've got to trim this off to allow it to overlap here, but not so much that I can't get the sheeting on for this part. So I'll trim this, and then we'll repeat the process with the steam, and I'll apply the glue and we'll get it held down and held in place. Now cut to dimensions and I can actually bend it round, and I'm happy enough with that to actually apply some glue. Initially just to hold it in place really, and then I'll apply more glue to actually hold it down totally. So I'm using that pencil line to help me guide it on, make sure it's square. Here, tack it here. This is where you actually need to have an extra set of hands. Failing that, you can always use some tape, which is what I'm about to do now. If I can get it to go around. Pretty crude, but it's a clamping method. And if nothing else, it just holds it in position while it cools down. And when it cools down, it tends to hold the position you've put it into. There we go. And now I've got my hands free, I can start applying the glue so I can pull this round. So if we actually apply a little bit along here. Might need some epoxy and a clamp there actually. So I'll carry on struggling with this, battling with this, and then I'll show you where we'll get up to once that's all been glued and set. If things become a little bit of a struggle, it's sometimes worth using a kicker, the CA kicker. It's brilliant stuff. I don't use it very often, but when you've got troublesome joints such as this, it often does the job. If it'll hold skirting boards on and miter joints in joinery, I'm sure it'll manage a little bit of balsa in thin ply. Well, there you have it. That's the plywood. Front cowl area has been applied, a little bit of super glue and some kicker. It's great stuff. You run out of hands to hold it down. I could have done it with Gorilla Glue, but that would have involved a lot of tape and a lot of pinning, and there's no guarantees that things wouldn't move around or pop off. It's done now. That's going nowhere. It's now ready to clad in 16th balsa, and that will then bring this cowl area up to the same thickness as the wood that I'll be using to cover the area here. So I hope that's been useful to people. Nothing to be frightened about working with thin ply that we use in aero modelling. Heat and water will allow it to bend to sometimes quite tortuous shapes, and it's such good quality that it won't delaminate the way the cheap stuff would if you were using the DIY ply. So I hope that's been useful to people. Stay tuned, I'll keep you up to date as I start covering this and working on blocking in the cowl area. So bye for now, take care, give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the video, stay subscribed, and you'll see the progress that I make with this build. Bye for now.